Hey there, welcome to Spectrum Pulse, where we talk about music, movies, art, and culture. And here's something I haven't done in a while, a proper album review of the newest project from Muna, Dancing on the Wall. One of my most anticipated albums of 2026, believe it or not, was this, the fourth album by the synthpop trio Muna. I think I got into them a little bit late in 2022. I liked their sophomore album, Saves the Day, in 2019, but that was coming at the tail end of a decade empowered by a lot of gleaming 80s-inspired synthpop, and Muna didn't quite stand out so strongly for me. They were really good, but were they great? What made them special? Well, that was answered in 2022 by their self-titled and self-produced album and its glorious lead-off single, Silk Chiffon, one of the best pop songs of the decade thus far, and I don't think that's a remotely controversial statement. But the whole album just rules. It wasn't just the joy of a project expertly timed for early summer, feeling free, seeking new love, taking the joyful, exuberant lead in their narrative post-breakup, even if the experience can throw a new lover a bit of a curveball. The meta text of it being their exit from RCA, who unsurprisingly didn't appear to know what the hell to do with them, it made the joy feel all the more sweet, which translates fantastically live when I saw him at Pitchfork Festival in 2024. Now, the album was not without its problems. You could tell it was a little transitional, especially as a self-produced project that was still trying to find focus for its sound with plenty of rough edges, but it left me quite excited for 2026 and Dancing on the Wall, even if the environment for American queer culture is in a considerably more precarious space, which nearly every critic has spoken of responsibly in the discussion of this upcoming album. Might as well get that in now. But I did not expect that it wouldn't just be better than their self-titled. Dancing on the Wall might just be their best to date and probably one of the best pop albums of 2026, buffing the few remaining issues I had in their production and melodic focus and centering them for a sweaty, summer fun album that flips the joyousness of their last project but not the earnestness. It feels like everything I want to hear in a pop record, and that's really high praise. And I was indeed thinking about making this a larger piece about my biases within pop music and why this act seems to nail everything so effectively on this project. But halfway through writing that, I realized I was overthinking it. It's been a long time since I did a more straightforward review anyway, and some will not shut up about how I should do more of these more often. Hey, if the albums are truly fantastic, or I got that much more to say, I will. And Muna's music does not need to be that overthought anyway. Even if I would argue this contains some of their most cerebral moments to date. Absolutely a compliment. But let's start off with the sound. One of the great things about Muna isn't just that their music feels like it's in direct conversation with the driving synth pop of previous decades, but it's not beholden to those eras. You're gonna get the driving drum machines, the fat bass synth textures, the squonking new wave guitars, the vocal overdubs that would fit rather directly within the 1980s, or every imitator in the 2010s, or something that's built more for the driving, overblown, late 90s, 2000s dance pop sounds. But then you'll get the shuddering change-ups, the drops, the contemporary percussion flourishes, the intensely queer subject matter that is so matter-of-fact to their experiences and would not have been like that in those previous decades. The reality that they're gonna go for broke every single time. It leads like a project that feels of its time in the fine details, but could have potentially sprawled out to other pop eras and would not feel that far removed. This gives them an edge in comparison with a lot of pop acts that just nakedly crib from the past and stay there, but also don't feel so of the present to feel dated even a year or so later. I think it's very Pink Pantherous in that, and again, compliment. And with the band taking more time to actually refine the production, to not quite feel as overcompressed, occasionally slapdash, it makes the best details of the self-title pop all the harder, from the stacked vocal harmonies to the gleaming synths to the swells of strings that add traces of opulence all across the album until the penultimate song alongside the breakbeats, and the song again reflects Pink Pantheress and a flash of the Veronicas untouched. It's awesome! Does it all work? No. I'm not sure why those breezy flickers of atmosphere are given their own track when they're just a few seconds of building ambiance. Tack them onto any opener of a song, they'd be fine. And the sour longing of Mary Jane leads on a very obvious marijuana metaphor within a lesbian relationship. which would have been fine if the hook didn't feel otherwise so clunky. I do think it's the worst song on the album, but those are the rare exceptions in comparison with the joyous careening of the title track, the faster, snarled, yet rubbery glam of Eastside Girls, the catty attitude against the pulsing new wave guitar punch of Girls Girl. Man, what a convenient song to release in the same year as my Underscores piece. That one aged interestingly well, especially as the artist herself commented on it. Speaking of which, the hazy stutters, the pitch down hook, and the change up of So What is not that far removed of one of the softer songs on You, and it's so great for it. And especially the bombastic Jimmy Jack Terry Lewis by way of early 2000s boy band pop of On Call that brings out the key change and absolutely nails it, down to the bridge that just really perfects that dynamic build. Side note, I wonder if folks have swung back around on key changes, especially after Bo Burnham crapped all over them on that god-awful parody song Pandering, attributing them to bro country when they weren't even really a thing in that subgenre, and conveniently missing the irony that he was pandering just as much to an audience that doesn't care about country and doesn't care to learn more or otherwise, including about the tropes in their own work. Tangent aside, I will say I'm a little cooler on some of the more explicit 90s dance throwbacks. Get So Hot is a good opener, but it feels more like setup than payoff, and Wannabeher has a lot of compelling ideas we will explore shortly, but as a grinding 2000s cut that sounds so huge, it's effective, just not a personal favorite. I also can't praise the tempo and pacing of this album enough. In between the breathless momentum of the bangers, but also the ability to keep the shuffling groove going in some of the slower moments, like when So What breaks into these pulsing, piano-accented electronica in the final minute, where I was concerned if they could pull off the downbeat ending they chose, but I think they absolutely stuck the landing. The album feels so tight, so impeccably sequenced. But about that, this is where lyrics come in, and it's necessary to place Dancing on the Wall in the proper context of the self-titled as something of a sequel, because while that project felt like it was running on pure joyous adrenaline, the feeling that if they slowed down that much, the emotions that they were shoving back would hit them like a truck, this is operating on a similar vibe, but emotionally feels more inescapable, mostly because the dynamics and the consequences of their hookups or lack thereof feel a little bit more immediate. They have time to brood on it, tied to a sense of place and community that's not always the most comfortable. There's some complexity there. Both Eastside Girls and Girls Girl, with their influx of proper nouns, had me wondering more than once if Muna were referring to very specific people in Los Angeles. It would not surprise me if there might be some overlap or from true experience. And that does some significant work when seemingly, despite every good reason to maybe step back from the dance floor hedonism, they just keep going, trying to keep serving glam and a lot of energy, loving just as hard. But where the blinding euphoria of the self-titled album could paper over how precarious it all is, this time they chose the method of just putting it all out in plain sight, embracing the passion even if the consequences are gonna get rough, including the metatext of them referencing the band's own success and getting into the glitzier rooms, but not exactly feeling happier about it. So What puts you precisely in that environment, and while there's never quite an admission that they are bothered in the text, it's the sort of half-hearted release where the pain is still very much in frame even as the dance floor shakeup happens. That's also something I found really compelling in these love stories. They feel kinetic, physical, bruising, a little high-minded until it gets very physical, with a great example being the blunt language of Wannabeher, a cut that the band is described as being inspired by Riot Girl and Bikini Kill specifically, and I believe it. The question of being in love, what drives that attraction? Someone that you admire or someone that you want to be or to emulate. I get the feeling that the emotional dimensionality of Muna's work tends to get lost when the hooks go so hard, and I think that does them a disservice. I love how sardonic Eastside Girls can feel with a line like, where you don't even miss the ocean, and if you know then you know and I know it, which immediately put me in line with when Lorde said she thinks he loved the beach, you're such a damn liar, a note of tension between the more polished veneers and something that's more wild and true. true. I love the desperate, ugly ambiguity of On Call. We're on a date with someone else who's trying to get her drunk. She's wishing to get a call from someone else to get used in a very different way. And I love the sequencing from the kiss off of Girl's Girl to the blurry Unless, and then Why Did I Get a Good Feeling, where you can spot the moments where the deflection all falls away and you fall back into trying again. But this would all be relatively familiar territory from Muna, a lot of stuff coming from the self-titled album, and yet there's two conceptual experiments across this project that deserve special attention. The first is Big Stick. It's the most political song I think Muna has ever made, riding a slice of icy 80s inflected synth pop and dance rock, where the highlights just how easy it would be for everyone worshiping what they do to be sold on something, where it starts around beauty standards and progresses to the paranoid suburban miasma, to the taciturn acknowledgement of what the United States is doing internationally in its broad exploitation, all in the name of imperialism, late capitalism. And what I like about this song is that it's half playing the villain, as some might do ironically in embracing that consumerism, but it's half feeling distinctly trapped like everyone else, where you hear the seductive pull of that command and power, but also the undercurrent of horror in having that power and you know it, being smart enough to reflect upon it and how to use it properly. Necessarily, this engages with the paratext of the climate in which Muna released this album, by which I gotta wonder if RCA would have even bothered to push it in the same way in 2026, given the stark queerness in the text. Certainly not with a song like this, but it also casts how Muna engages in relationships in a different way too, especially when they might feel more commodified in the experience of fame. And this takes us to the closing track, Buzzkiller, with the stuttering haze and the minor keys and the aching strings, where everything is then forced to slow down. And it's a pretty harsh downbeat ending, where despite all the hot, intense, passionate energy, there's the feeling of knowing too much and how that'll bring down the room when it's inevitably revealed. That you feel like you're getting older and you haven't settled down yet, that you're past your prime, that you're easy to love in a moment, but just wait till that fades. The fact that you're successful in the bad systems, but you feel so alone, that you go to a protest and you feel so exhausted and hopeless at the end of it. I mean, I'm lucky that I'm married now, but man, it feels way too real to how I felt in the early 2020s. I get this. Muna knows that they can play the game and get plenty of heady fun out of it, that they're doing the right things, but I really appreciate the emotional acknowledgement of what it can feel like when you have to come down, how wearying and exhausting it is. But in one of the rare cases where I like the fragmented studio chatter being left in, I heard I love you as among the last words of the album, where it highlights just how much friendship, camaraderie, community matters in the end despite every extreme of passion. And that gives this album a real tight emotional core. In short, look, it's cheesy as hell for me to say that an album like this feels essential, especially given that I'm covering this on the first day of Pride, but Muna's Dancing on the Wall, if it's not on your playlist for this month, you're doing something wrong. I can't just say the project meets the moment, although it certainly helps. It damn near nails everything that I want to hear in mainstream pop. It sets a bar. The production is impeccably balanced. The hooks are terrific. I love the harmonies. I love the earnestness that walks that narrow balance between serving the vibes and every glimpse behind the curtain to the people who are barely holding it together. It's got stiff competition to be among my top albums of this year, but I think it really has earned the distinction, and I really wish more people were talking about it and giving it more time. Y'all folks, this is special. Please check it out. So yeah, thanks a lot for watching. If you want to see more, please be sure to like, share, drop comments, and subscribe. Man, it's been a while since I've done that tagline on my outro. But hey, again, I put out plenty of video essays, but I still occasionally want to do a review when the album is this great, and this was indeed one that was pretty special. The rest of June, I'm going to be trying to get through my backlog before mid-year stuff, although depending what comes up, we might have another video essay or two. We will have to see. But again, if you want to see more, like, subscribe. If you want to actually see things typically a little bit early or help contribute to my schedule when July rolls around, link to my Patreon and YouTube memberships is right over there. Don't feel obligated. It's really tough times out there. I understand, but the option's available. Till then, I'm Mark. You're watching Spectrum Pulse. Happy Pride, and I'll see you next time.